Comment on the narrative technique in Sons and Lovers. Marks 10-12. Answer. D. H. Lawrence adopts third-person narrative in the novel Sons and Lovers. However, the omniscient or third-person point of view is problematized in the narrative through the focalization of the various characters. Moreover, there are shifts even in the narrator's perspective, as critic Graham Holderness points out. Holderness sees the opening of Sons and Lovers as an instance of the distinction between the detached and the direct perspective of the mining community. Starting from an aerial view while describing the location of the bottom, the narrative perspective comes closer, even though the detached perspective of the superficial observer is continued, when the narrative concentrates upon the appearance of the houses themselves. Accompanying this detached description is the use of the impersonal one. But when the perspective moves still closer, from the parlor and the front gardens of the houses to the kitchen and the alley and then into Mrs. Morell's house, the detachment of the narrative perspective is replaced by a direct inside view, expressed in a language of real existence. The observer's perspective is contrasted with the participant's knowledge. Lawrence, thereby, shows two kinds of unpersonality, namely that which derives from superficial observation or ignorance, and that which derives from the ability to see the life of a mining community with both inward knowledge and a wider perspective. Other critics, like Louis I. Martz and Diane S. Bonds, have explored the ambiguity in the narratorial voice that destabilizes its authority. Martz examines the infiltration of Paul's point of view into the narrator's voice and its implications for the portrayal of Miriam in the narrative. Miriam becomes ambiguous because the action in the sections featuring Miriam conflicts with the narrative voice interpreting them. If we have a perusal of chapter 8, we find a passage featuring Miriam and Paul. Here again we see the narrative voice. Miriam is sensuous and her love for Paul at this point is not only spiritual but physical too. But it is Paul who recoils and is subsequently filled with hatred for her. So we can see the impersonal narrative voice being supplanted with the focalization of Paul. In fact, this occurs especially through much of Part 2. However, Paul's point of view also comes into conflict with Miriam's and Clara's when the narrative voice, on certain occasions, seems to align itself with the points of views of the latter two. However, while Martz opines that the narrative voice stabilizes itself throughout the last 4 chapters, for Bonds on the other hand, the instability of the narrative voices continues throughout the novel. Thus, we see that Lawrence in his novel Sons and Lovers problematizes the third-person or impersonal or omniscient point of view in a number of ways that have become characteristic of his narrative technique. Finished. Thank you for watching the video. Please subscribe, like and comment.